Nick Foles, another name that's out there as well. There's all these things that are floating around about Carson Wentz and the potential of a Carson Wentz trade. I think we have reached the point of no return. I think it's time to turn the page. That's where I was at yesterday, and that's where I'm at even more so now that a fifth story has come out about Carson Wentz, the teammate, Carson Wentz, the employee, Carson Wentz, the Philadelphia Eagle. And I am just dumbfounded by all of this. Because if you go back to 2 years ago, Joe Santoliquito of PhillyVoice.com put out a story that he was ridiculed for, chastised for, tormented for, and harassed for. How dare he question the golden child, Carson Wentz, and his leadership capabilities? How dare he attack him when he's at his lowest point, coming off an awful season where he played with, by the way, a broken back. And people were thinking, it's a bad year for Carson. He'll be fine. It wasn't fine. And it only got worse after that point. I mean, you had a nice little flash at the end of last season, now 2 years ago, really, where they won 5 games in a row to end the season, 4 games in a row to end the season, make the playoffs, and then he eventually got knocked out of the playoffs in the first quarter by Jadeveon Clowney. But after that fractured back season, Carson Wentz was put through the ringer by some media members, and for the most part, defended. And from myself included, I came out of that fractured back situation where Nick Foles took them back into the playoffs and rallied them at the end of the season, and they were an Alshon Jeffrey drop away, most likely, from going to an NFC Championship game for a second straight year. I took that season with Carson Wentz where they did not put him on IR with a fracture in his back and said, you know what? Despite all the medical questions we might have about how the Eagles take care of their player, I take one thing away from that. We have a badass at quarterback in Carson Wentz. And I thought, hey, this guy's one tough son of a gun. This guy will go out there and do anything for his team. And then this story came out about him changing plays. This is the first story in Philly Voice by Joe Santoliquito about him changing plays at the line of scrimmage because he didn't want to do any of that Nick Foles crap, as it was said in the story. Players coming out in the locker room, former coaches coming out, all these unnamed sources saying things along the lines of, hey, this the Carson guy, he's not the leader you think he is. This guy is all about himself. This guy doesn't know how to lead. And some of it you could explain as, all right, so fine, he's the guy at the workplace that nobody can stand, but you got to work with him, so you work with him, and it only helps yourself and your own bank account if you're actually going along with what the quarterback's doing. Apparently, all that didn't get better, it got worse. And since that first story came out 2 years ago, there was a story that came out from ESPN's Tim McManus talking about a back and forth between Darren Sproles and Carson Wentz and how Carson Wentz was sulking during the year of the Super Bowl after he got hurt. And Darren Sproles says, hey, you're still a leader of this team. We need you involved here. And that kind of shook up Wentz a little bit. And then there was a story from Jeff McClain about 6 months after the original story. That was story number 3. And then Jeff McClain most recently came out with another story in the Enquirer a few weeks ago, talking about a lot of the same things that came out in the story from Joe Santoliquito originally. So then what happens? Yesterday, story number 2 from Joe Santoliquito comes on the PhillyVoice.com. And it is a long story. And if you have not read this story, it is, I'll summarize it for you. I have a couple of excerpts here that I want to get to for you that just highlights exactly what kind of guy Carson Wentz is. Now, I go through this whole thing, and you might say, bad teammate. And ultimately, a selfish teammate can be a very bad teammate. But how much selfishness are you willing to put up with during a season where you're only winning 4 games? And the guy being selfish, supposedly, allegedly, reportedly, for a 5th time over, reportedly being selfish, how much of that can you put up when that guy is the worst-rated quarterback in the NFL? I would say you won't put up for that. You won't put up with that for a long time. So Joe's story this time around talks to, and this is who he references, he references those with direct knowledge of the situation, numerous current and former Eagles, as well as others around the NFL who were involved in the reporting of this story. So those are the unnamed sources, but at least that's their status in the league and amongst the Eagles. One of the stories that Joe points out in the article that came out yesterday on PhillyVoice.com is that no one's really going to believe Carson Wentz because he's not the type of guy to just kind of take up arms around the team and rally the troops, because they looked at the report that came out about him wanting to be traded as a guy quitting on them. And I can understand that. And look, A lot of people ripped on Jalen Hurts because he wanted to be transferred in college. The kid wants to play. He wants to help his own draft seeding and all that stuff. I don't blame a guy for that. Fine. You think you do better for your future by transferring schools? That's fine. Not wanting to compete. He stuck it out there for a while at Bama before he went over to Oklahoma. So I don't really blame him too much for that. I don't blame a quarterback that thinks he should be a starter and say, you know what, this isn't the situation for me. See you later. But when it seems like the Eagles have done everything in their power to coddle Carson Wentz, to bring him along, Doug Peterson having all the faith in the world by keeping him out there as a starter for as long as he did, despite being the worst-rated starting quarterback in the NFL, if I'm Carson Wentz, I'm happy with the situation, at least amongst my teammates and my coach. I'm not happy with the front office drafting Jalen Hurts, but I'm happy at least with my immediate surroundings. But the Eagles and the players looked at that report of him saying, you know what, I don't want to start here, so I'm out. See you later, as a guy that was quitting on him. Now, keep in mind, this is a team that was looking at Carson Wentz over the last couple of years as at least a guy that was willing to go out there and play hurt. This is a guy that rushed for a touchdown and tore 2 ligaments in his Achilles. This is a guy that threw a touchdown on those same 2 torn ligaments in his knee. That's a guy you can play for. And ever since that moment, that Super Bowl year, there has just been diminishing returns on the investment from Carson Wentz. And, oh, yeah, by the way, another investment, aside from all the hoorah stuff going on in the locker room and what could be happening with his head coach, the front office still gave him $107 million guaranteed dollars. That's a couple of bucks. That would buy some, encouragement from the front office. That would buy some trust from any player if an organization is willing to say, you're our guy. But it looks like he just couldn't get over the whole Jalen Hurts being drafted in the second round thing. And part of that, okay, I get. You're a starting quarterback. You're under the age of 30. They just gave you all this money. You would think they want you to be as good as possible. So maybe, Dobbins is a guy you would take there. Maybe they help out the secondary a little bit with that number 53 overall pick. But no, instead, they get a guy to be your backup. A guy who, if all went right, wasn't going to play at all. So if you're Carson, I get why you would be a little upset at that. But I don't understand how you let that ruin your day. So a lot of players looked at that potential of him being wanting a trade as this guy's quitting on us. That was the first excerpt that jumped out to me from Joe Santoliquito. The other was everyone was looking at each other and thinking, does he want out of here? And it's surrounding that same type of thing. And it was a December 21st report that said that Carson Wentz was looking to go elsewhere. That's more on that first excerpt. And then second, this is what really is wild to me. And it's an excerpt from the article itself. It's not a quote. And it really talks about the power that Jeffrey Lurie gave Carson Wentz. And this is where I always say what professional athletes do is not that different from what you do in terms of office politics. You don't have to be a professional athlete to know what office politics are because they boil down to the everyman. Every office, every place of work has them. And Carson Wentz, in his case, the politics, there was no Congress, there was no Senate, there was no nothing. There was just the president, and that's Jeffrey Lurie, the owner. He had the number to the bat phone in Jeffrey Lurie's office. So if there was a problem with an assistant coach, if there was a problem with a head coach, if there was a problem with a teammate, guess what? He's picking up that bat phone, and he's talking to the owner himself. So anybody else that tries to tell him what time it is, what day it is, what temperature it is, try to tell him anything. Yeah. I'll call the big boss. Anyone who understands office politics understands why that can be detrimental to the success of any organization, whether that be in professional sports or whether that be in an accounting firm. That's not good, especially when that person is going right to the person that can pull rank over everybody else. That really hurts the chain of command. So when you talk about that, that's really an allowance. That's a freedom. That's Carson. Yeah, come in here and do whatever you want, basically. If you want to change a play at the line of scrimmage, by all means, you change that play at the line of scrimmage. If you can go to the owner over everybody else, and the owner has, you have his ear, what is everybody else going to do to try to keep somebody else accountable when that person's going over your head every single time? And that's what it looks like. That's at least the vibe in the locker room. That's how they viewed Carson. Now, we've talked about how it's time to move on. This only furthers that idea because it's done beyond repair at this point. And then we also talked about this. This is something that we touched on briefly yesterday. This quote is coming from an anonymous NFL source. So it doesn't say former player or anything specific. Wentz is a glorified system quarterback who needs the right coaching, the willingness to accept coaching, take proper preparation, and also have a lot of pieces around him. He's not going to create like an Aaron Rodgers or a Patrick Mahomes. That's where the Eagles got fooled in 2017. That version of Carson Wentz is gone. They still haven't accepted that. I know I've accepted that. When breaking down Carson Wentz, I still think there's a good quarterback in there. And one of the things that Joe points out in his article on PhillyVoice.com is that Carson Wentz, unanimously across the league, everyone thinks he still can be fixed. But is he going to get back to MVP? Can he be a serviceable quarterback in the NFL? I'm sure. Can he be an MVP caliber quarterback again? That's where I have my doubts. And as much as I'd love to root for him and say, hey, good luck to you, and it didn't work out here, but hopefully it does for you somewhere else, I just don't think he can go back to that type of form. And this kind of quotation, this kind of excerpt is exactly why I think that. Think about all those things, the right coaching and the willingness to be coached. So you could actually be coaching him well, and he might just not like what you're telling him. And he might just think, I'm not going to do that. I'll do this. That's not going to work out for anybody. And it's certainly going to hurt the Eagles' chances of actually moving on from Carson Wentz. So there was this last thing that jumped out to me here, and it has to do with leadership in the locker room. And this seems to be a recurring theme with Carson. You could be in a leadership position in the NFL. You could be a leadership position anywhere where people are supposed to look to that general spot and say, that guy's our leader. A point guard in basketball, a quarterback in the NFL, obviously. But just because you're in that spot doesn't mean that you're a leader. And Carson might be in a leadership position without being a good leader. He might not know how to be that leader of men. And one of the things that the Eagles pointed out, or really tried to do in this offseason, is hand him the reins of leadership. Chris Long, allowed to retire. Malcolm Jenkins was allowed to walk and go to the New Orleans Saints. Two huge, great leaders in the locker room that people looked up to. And it just wasn't the case for Carson to take those reins and be a good leader on this football team. One of the things that the article points out here is if you really think you're going to get someone in here who's going to be a hard-ass, quote-unquote, hard-ass coach to Carson Wentz, you basically got to think again. Some bad guys may succeed in this league. Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, they win, and they could be bad guys for their teammates. But Carson Wentz, what's he won? Rodgers has won a Super Bowl. Tom Brady obviously just won his 7th. So those guys are worthy of, I'm not using the word that's used in the article and the quote, those guys are worthy of being a jerk because players will know they have a chance to win, even if that guy's being a jerk. They respect that guy. But for Carson Wentz, according to this source, Carson Wentz, what has he won? And it's going on 6 years now. I feel like we all bought into a hell of a lot of fool's gold. And in the beginning of the Carson Wentz era, I was against the Eagles trading up to get him back in the day. Watching him in 2016, certainly watching him in 2017, I thought to myself, wow, this guy, he's going to prove me wrong. I'm an idiot. What do you know? And ever since that 2017 season, you look at 2019 at the end of the year with that nice run they went on, that 2017 quarterback is just not there. We've seen some incredible plays from Carson. Going 2 years ago now, the throw to Miles Sanders against Washington in the end zone, where he's rolling to his right, throws a bullet through 2 defenders, right to Miles Sanders for a touchdown. Unbelievable. The over-the-top pass to Boston Scott against the Giants this season. Beautiful throw. Some great escapability, keeping plays alive and all that. We've seen some of it. We've seen the flashes of it, but we haven't seen it over an extended period of time. So take that. Take that he hasn't been very good, which is the ultimate currency, and couple that with turmoil in the front office, getting a coach fired, not really progressing as a leader in the locker room. A lot of the same stories that came out 2 years ago are still coming out today. It's over. At this point in time, I feel as if Howie Roseman is sitting, taking calls still, waiting for somebody to balk, and give that first round pick, that extra 4th or 3rd round pick. Howie's waiting right now to see if anyone else will say, all right, well, let's get this done. We're going to go with a 4th rounder. We're going to go with a 3rd rounder to go along with a 1st rounder, because I think that's already been decided. Maybe it's waiting to see if they'll move from a 2nd to a 1st. We'll see. But that's where I think Howie is at right now. I think he has the vast majority of the offers already. We've talked about the Colts. We've talked about the Bears before. And I think what Howie's doing right now is just waiting to see who is going to up that price ever so slightly so he knows he can get a top return on his investment. Bottom line, still $34 million in dead cap. Jeffrey Lurie's got to be looking at that saying, Howie, this is what you're supposed to be really good at. And I still got to eat $34 million? And now you got more of the currency that you're really bad at? Draft picks? I hope this works. By the way, I saved the best for last. One of the best excerpts from this story is how some players are afraid, and I say best jokingly, is how some players are afraid to speak up and hold Carson accountable when a coach wouldn't or a coach won't. And the story actually goes into detail about how a player, their mindset is, if Carson can get Doug Peterson fired, what can happen to me? If I'm just like, man number 50 on the roster, oh man, if I say something, what's the coach going to say? If they can move on, or what's the front office going to say? If they can move on from a guy like Chris Long, who was coming off of back-to-back Super Bowls, who helped this team again in 2019, if he can come off of a year like that, and Malcolm Jenkins can be allowed to move on because they want to make sure Carson's the leader of the football team, yeah, the guy's basically calling the shots. So I think it only behooves both parties for this to just be done, for the breakup to happen. Now, again, where are we at as far as that breakup goes right now? Well, Mike Garafolo of the NFL Network was talking about it yesterday. Here's the current state of where the Eagles are at with possibly moving on from Carson Wentz.
I made calls to everyone involved in this one and was told this morning that nothing is imminent, that the Eagles are basically waiting for an offer that they think is worthwhile to trade away Carson Wentz. And one of the options still on the table, I don't think this is likely, but one of the options still on the table is they don't get an offer that they deem worthy, and they say, okay, Carson Wentz, report to training camp. I believe in the end he is going to be traded, and they will get an offer that will make them part with Wentz. I still can't see a path for him to come back to the Eagles. I said on WIP radio in Philly last week, I was 50-50, but then when I was on with them, I said, I'm officially at 51-49, he's getting traded, and I don't think I'm coming back to 50-50. So I am almost now 100% sure that he is eventually going to get traded, but it may not be as quick as some folks think here. The Bears and the Colts are amongst the teams involved. I am told that there are more teams involved, and I will also tell you that the Bears and Colts have other quarterbacks that they are keeping an eye on.
And so is he going to be traded or is he not going to be traded? He's going to be traded, and Mike Garafolo still believes that. But now I think we're in this waiting period, like I said earlier, of Howie just sitting by the phone saying, all right, who's going to be the guy that can be top dollar? And it could be Carson Wentz still goes in there at training camp. It could be waiting for a moment of somebody else getting hurt, God forbid. But by then, rosters are pretty much full. You already had the draft, obviously. Guys brought their quarterbacks in. They know what they're doing. They're fine. They're ready to go. They're ready for the season. But I still think it happens at the most within the next 2 weeks. I think Howie will wait it out that long. You got the New Year League starting in less than a little bit more than a month now. I think in the next 2 weeks, we will put a capstone on this. And it feels like they're going to be dragging it out. But ultimately, Howie's going to be waiting for that final deal to come through. Imminent, it's funny to say imminent. I think it's imminent. I can't go back to it enough. There's no coming back from the moment that the Eagles are already in. There's no coming back from all these stories that have already come out. There's no coming back from already taking calls. There's no coming back from, naming two teams, Colts and the Bears, that are supposedly in hot pursuit. And the Bears, by the way, yesterday, they elevated John DeFilippo to be their passing game coordinator. So guess who Carson Wentz is going to be throwing for again if he does, in fact, go to the Chicago Bears? John DeFilippo, who apparently was that hard-ass coach that this article talked about, the one that could keep Carson Wentz under his wraps, keep him under control just a little bit, just as Frank Reich did as well when he was the offensive coordinator. And one more thing I'm going to point out from the Philly Voice article for you is it refutes a little bit of the report that came out from Jeff McClain last week, or 2 weeks ago, where Jeff McLane said that Carson would go to the line of scrimmage and check out of a play that Doug Peterson called simply because and only because because Carson Wentz didn't want to run that play. He wanted to run something that was more suited to his skill set. This article does refute that, and it says that multiple players came out and said, yeah, there's no way in hell that would happen. He wouldn't change the play because of that. He would change the play to something else that they already did in practice. It wasn't like willy-nilly Carson Wentz was going out there and saying, no, we're not doing this. We're doing my play. It wasn't like that at all. So that was just one of the discrepancies between the most recent McLane story and the most recent Joe Santoliquito story. But the other thing that I want to point out is Carson Wentz supposedly was given too much leeway at first. And this is something that I have doubted in recent weeks. I have doubted how high Carson Wentz's football IQ is. And I believe it was in the Bengals game, if I'm not mistaken, the tie game, where Carson was reading the defense, had time to threw the football directly at a linebacker. And I think it was Archuleta who was doing the game. He pointed it out, and I just thought because the ball was tipped in this particular play. So I thought, blaming Carson for this. But you could tell where he was throwing the football, still the direction, that was the wrong direction to go in at the time because it was well covered by a linebacker. And I'm thinking, what happened to that football IQ? He's not under duress. He's throwing the football. It's getting tipped. Why is he throwing in that vicinity anyway? And you saw on the other side of the football field, somebody was open. Now, it's easy to second guess and play armchair quarterback in that exact instance. But when you're watching Carson go through that progression, you're thinking that's the decision he made? Oh, that's weird. You're watching other plays play out throughout the entire season, and you're looking at Carson saying, well, that is a weird decision. And then you think about some of the statistics that came out in the first 6 games of the season, first 7 games of the season, where Carson Wentz, bad offensive line, he's under pressure. Yeah, still with time in the pocket, he was one of the worst rated quarterbacks in the NFL to that point and continued that throughout the rest of the year. So what is he looking at? Is it shell shock? Is he waiting for the pressure even when there is no pressure? If so, then he's got to get his head right, and I think that's where most of the problems lie. Ron Jaworski is also quoted in the article saying the same thing. Physically speaking, he thinks Wentz is fine. Mentally speaking, that's what ultimately needs the corrections. You can have some bad mechanics as a quarterback. You could be unorthodox. We certainly saw some unorthodox throws from Carson Wentz throughout his rookie season and 2017. You can live with that. But the mental mistakes of not being able to recognize what's in front of you and break it down, that's where I thought Carson Wentz was starting to take some hits as not having a high football IQ. According to the article, everyone's still saying that Carson is off the charts when it comes to a high football IQ. So we'll see what the future holds for him. I just still am 100% sold on the idea that his future will not be here in Philadelphia. Carson Wentz has taken his last snap with the Philadelphia Eagles. Coming up in just a second, it is HUGHSDAY here on the Farzy Show. Our good friend Hugh Douglas will be joining us momentarily, but right now, I got to tell you about my good friend Steven Singer. Sunday is Valentine's Day, folks. So make sure you get your gold dip rose for my good friend Steven Singer. If you followed me here on this format here, this multi-platform format across all social media, YouTube, Twitch, thanks for checking us out, then you know Steven Singer. You obviously do. You know him from his gold dip roses. You know him from IHateStevenSinger.com. You know him from the other corner of 8th and Walnut. You know media mogul and jewelry mogul Steven Singer. So that's who you know, and that's why you got to stick with who you know at Steven Singer Jewelers. He likes to consider himself to be like Walmart and Tiffany's. If they had a baby, they name it Steven Singer because he wants you to know that you're getting the best value at the lowest price possible. The perfect price, if you will. Doesn't mess around with sales, discounts, anything like that. There's not even a promo code for Steven because you're already getting the best price when you walk in the door. So you know you're getting the best value. And Valentine's Day, like I said, fellas, Sunday. Make sure you're taking advantage of all that Steven Singer has to offer. Don't miss out. Go to IHateStevenSinger.com to avoid shipping delays. Steven has the #1 gift this Valentine's Day, as he does every Valentine's Day. Real beautiful gold-dipped roses. Real roses dipped in 24-karat gold, preserved and guaranteed to last a lifetime. No better time to say I love you, especially with the brand new Twinkle Twinkle deep blue sparkling rose. The color of the night sky, just as the sun goes down. Go now to IHateStevenSinger.com and get free shipping. IHateStevenSinger.com, just $59. All right, we're going to let you hear from Hugh Douglas. We're going to get Hugh Douglas in just one second. Coming up later in the program, we do have an update on the streaker from the Super Bowl. I know that you guys were losing sleep over this. Well, I got the goods for you. Don't you worry. But right now, let's check in on the Zados Investment guest line and with our good friend on this HUGHSDAY, Mr. Hugh Douglas. Is once again number 53, Hugh Douglas, fifth on the Eagles' all-time sack list, tied with Fletcher Cox right now. No big deal. What's up, Hugh?
What's going on, man? How you doing today?
You know we like to bask in the drama in Philadelphia. You remember the drama?
You know you gotta love it. You know what? The thing that I miss about being in Philly, there was always something going on in the off season.
It's so true. It just kind of follows us around no matter what, because we always have our nose in places that it usually shouldn't be, but we make it our business because we're fans. We're media members. We got to know this stuff.
Yes. And it's a passionate place to play. It's a passionate place to be. And they talk football 24/7. No question about it.
Absolutely. And now it's been about, I think by my count alone, this is 4 to 5 stories, 5 stories probably, just about Carson Wentz, the human being in the locker room, not necessarily Carson Wentz, the player. A second story has come out by the same writer, Joe Santoliquito, Philly Voice, wrote a story that, Joe, you remember Joe?
I remember Joe.
Joe wrote a story almost 2 years ago now about Carson Wentz and having a bad attitude when it came to being coachable, when it came to trying to be a leader to this team, being almost too much of an alpha male and not wanting to do anything that was Nick Foles related in the playbook before Nick Foles departed for to move on with his career. So now another story comes out, but in between there's a couple more. And Joe wrote a second story that came out today, more or less highlighting a lot of the same things, not putting Carson Wentz in the best light. And right now we're on the doorstep of Carson Wentz possibly being traded. So I'll ask you, as somebody who still has a lot of ties here in Philadelphia, somebody who still has relationships with people with the Eagles, when you hear Carson Wentz's name brought up, what kind of light is it brought up in?
You know, I've heard a few times that he's not a good guy. I've heard that, but as you know, Marc Farzetta, I've never met him personally, and I try not to judge someone on what somebody else told me. But I did hear some of these stories, and then, I see like Lane Johnson and some of his teammates have his back. And, you just have to respect that because the locker room dynamic is totally different than the one that you have in the media. And as a media member now, players treat media different than they treat other players. So with that, all of that being said, I felt like it wasn't my place to go on the air or say anything negative about Carson Wentz when I didn't have the story firsthand. Mm-hmm. But I have heard that about him before. I've heard players say that, he wasn't the best guy. I've heard former players say the same thing. And, when you mention his name around certain people in the organization, they kind of get a little quiet. It's one of those things that you really don't want to talk about. So, I felt like there was something there. But me personally never got a chance to meet him, so really couldn't draw my own conclusions from that.
Mm-hmm. And right. And I think it's one of those things because, look, I always try to associate people or try to relay to people that it's not that different. Yeah, sure, it's professional sports and these guys are packing stadiums and we put them on a pedestal, but it's not that different than anything else that you and I, just as human beings, would interact with. Even me, who's never been in that professional ranking there in the NFL, where it comes down to you hear something about somebody. It doesn't have to be a football player, and it's just hearsay. But then you read a couple of more stories about it, and then you hear from a couple more people, and it's like, well, wow, some of that stuff must be true.
Be true, yeah. And that's the thing, Mark, because, the unfortunate thing about stories is if we're in a position where if you hear the same story or a variation of the story 2 to 3 times, then as an analyst, as a radio host, that there's probably somewhere that some of that is true. You don't know how much, and you really have to figure out where you are. And unfortunately for us, we have to choose a side. When we're doing a radio show, we have to choose a side. We got to figure out what side we're going to be on this story. And sometimes it's one of those things where you just don't know, and you got to kind of, piecemeal the whole situation together. But like I said, I've heard this about him before. So I think he's somewhere in the middle. A lot has been Carson Wentz had a meteoric rise, came to a great city to play football, came to a city that was starving for a championship. He put them in position to get a championship. Nick Foles brought it home, but he is still beloved in the city. So now when you hear all these stories when things are going right and you hear all these stories, people tend to want to believe that they're not true. But when you keep hearing them over and over again, you know that there's something, there has to be something to these stories. And on top of that, you got the head coach fired. Like that to me is the most telling thing. Doug Peterson is a god in Philadelphia. And his ass is out there on the street right now. He on the street.
Good. Yep. Exactly.
So, I mean, you got to look at it and you just have to wonder. With everything that happened, when you talk about the story of, him being disgruntled, the stories when he got benched, how he wanted to be traded, and then the timeline from that until Doug Peterson being fired. Come on, man. What that look like to you?
Yeah, no, the stories look accurate, and we touched on it already. We both know Joe Santoliquito. I have been a subject of a Joe Santoliquito story, so I know the research that he does on his not his targets by any means, but on his subjects. And people came at Joe 2 years ago for the original story. Then ESPN came out with a story. The Inquirer came out with a story. Recently, as recent as a couple of weeks ago, The Inquirer came out with another story on Carson Wentz, what he's like behind the scenes and how he might not be coachable, might not be the best teammate. And then Joe came out with a story again today, or yesterday rather. And now a lot of people are starting to buy this. And when you see the play on the field not really justify anybody giving him support, that's where I think a lot of people just look at it and say, look, we can't support him anymore. The play doesn't even justify us supporting him or us turning a blind eye to it. And now everybody seems like they're coming down on the man to the point of, if he can get a coach fired, he can get me released as a player or me lose playing time as a player. Like, how much power can one guy have with an organization, even in the idea that they might move on from him anyway?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of fascinating. And then it's unfortunate because now, this is the unfortunate thing about it, Mark. You're trying to trade the guy, if that rumor is true. If you're trying to trade him, this kind of hurts his market value. When you trade him, he comes with that hefty contract. And now you're talking about bringing him into an organization and making him the face of your franchise. Oh, but he's uncoachable. Like, who wants that nightmare?
Nobody.
Who wants that nightmare?
Nobody does.
Coach a guy who, when you look at it in the grand scheme of things, there are quarterbacks out there that are. Can we say douche or can we not? We can't say douche.
You can say douche. Yeah, it's the internet.
Douche is okay because I didn't know the rules. I didn't know the rules. But a guy that's a douche that hasn't won anything, who wants that? Who wants to deal with that? If you're Aaron Rodgers and you're a douche, I deal with a douchey Aaron Rodgers. I would deal with that. I would deal with a douchey Tom Brady. Mm-hmm. Hell, I'll deal with a douchey Russell Wilson. I'm not dealing with a douchey Carson Wentz.
Me neither.
Like, he's putting you in position to be in the playoffs, but anything outside of that, I'm not dealing with that. And on top of that, he could potentially get you fired. That's a recipe for disaster.
No doubt. No doubt. And you and I are smart enough to have douche clauses in our contracts. Or we could just be
Can't work with douchey people, man.
No, absolutely not. So I'll ask you this. Is this beyond the point of no return? Because I feel like it is for the Eagles. I feel like enough stuff's been out there. It's just a matter of Howie kind of sitting and waiting for the right offer to see what he can get, the most he can possibly get for Carson Wentz, the best deal out there. He's sitting and waiting for somebody to bulk, waiting for somebody to, to panic a little bit and maybe offer a little bit more than they originally would. Mm-hmm. And then he's going to pounce on it. And then Carson Wentz is done. I feel like Carson has taken his last snap in Philadelphia.
Yeah, because this is the thing. You got the new coach coming in, Coach Sirianni, and if it gets off to a rough start in Philadelphia and he's not playing well and the fans start to get on him, I don't know if he can weather that storm. And, there's going to be some blame being placed. So I think the best thing to do is try to move forward with Jalen Hurts, and see what he can bring to the table. My thing, when it comes to young quarterbacks, you need a little bit more of a resume. He doesn't have that, but you're in a position right now where it sounds like Carson Wentz does not want to be in Philadelphia. It sounds like Philadelphia is about to move on from him. So that's what you're stuck with. So move on, new coach, new quarterback, try to make the best of the situation.
Yeah, it seems like most people are definitely thinking that's the next step here in Philly is the two just part ways. Now, You mentioned young quarterback, and that's what Jalen Hurts is. There's another young quarterback that's a lot more accomplished, and we'll make a complete left turn away from the Eagles for a second and talk about that Super Bowl that happened. I'm sure that was the lead story in Atlanta on 92.9 The Game.
Yeah.
What was the talk of your boy Andy Reid and the Chiefs not even showing up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? What happened?
Defense. You know, Marc Farzetta, they played stellar defense. It gave me goosebumps to see you could rush with 4. Like they rushed. They had 5 blitzes out of that whole game. They blitzed 5 times. They got one-on-one pressure from 4 guys. 4 guys up front dominated that game. And that's what it's all about. You're talking about Ndamukong Suh and Vita Vea up front, that when you look at Patrick Mahomes, when he was dropping back, they were flushing him out of the pocket. He didn't have time to do anything. That was a thing of beauty to see as a former defensive lineman, to see that kind of pressure put on a quarterback in a game of that magnitude. It was lovely. It was lovely to see.
When I was watching Shaq get in the backfield, I was thinking of a former number 53 for the Philadelphia Eagles. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, you know, I was thinking that too. I mean, listen, Shaq's about to get paid. And just like Bruce Arians said, it's going to be hard to keep all those guys there, because I think his deal is up. I think Mike Evans' deal is up. I think Gronk's going to be gone. So they got a lot of guys that they're going to try. Like, if they want to try to make another run, they're going to have to try to figure out a way to try to keep that team together. And you know how it goes, Farzetta. You get paid from the Super Bowl. You win the Super Bowl, it's time to get paid. You're going to want to get paid.
Absolutely. You mentioned how great the defense was. Todd Bowles, former defensive coordinator here in Philadelphia, a Temple player as well, played for Bruce Arians, right? They go way back. He was nothing short of masterful. I got into a lot of it yesterday morning. It was like watching a maestro just confuse the hell out of the guy that's the best all-around quarterback in the NFL right now, Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, you're talking about a guy in Patrick Mahomes who didn't look like he knew whether he was coming or going. I've never seen that level of frustration from a quarterback on any level. Never seen it before. And he just dialed up a masterful game. Shout out to the Temple alum, because I know on my Twitter feed, that's all everybody was talking about, how Temple was represented in the Super Bowl yesterday. So shout out Temple University and all the alumni that go to Temple. I know you're one of the alumni. Yeah, man. It was great to see. And then think about it like this. It was one of those games where Big Red's my coach, but there was a lot of guys on that Tampa Bay Bucks coaching staff that I had to root for. Mike Caldwell, one of my old teammates here with the Philadelphia Eagles. He's a coach. Byron Leftwich was my quarterback when I was down there on vacation in Jacksonville. So, you know, it was a couple guys on that team that as bad as I felt for Big Red in that situation, you know, I felt like, hey, you know, I was happy for those guys to actually get a ring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I forgot that's what you referred to Jacksonville as, your little paid vacation. Hey, good for you. People love going to Florida for vacation.
Yeah, they do.
Maybe not right now, but most of the time.
Oh, no, they still do. They have what they call out there now. It's called super spreader events.
I heard about them for a while ago. I'm not surprised they're still around. What can I say?
Super spreader events.
Real quick, commercial wise for the Super Bowl, I felt like overall it was lacking a couple of stellar ones. Any commercials jump out to you?
You know, the Paramount commercial was okay.
Okay, yeah.
Talking about going to the mountaintop.
Right.
The what was it? The Alexa commercial with Michael B. Jordan. Dude,
yes.
That was a raunchy commercial. Especially when he was with I'm not going to say it because this is a family show.
Yeah, damn right.
The sprinkler system situation when they were talking about the sprinklers. Dude, I was like, really? Is this primetime television? What about the children? What are you doing here? What's going on here?
I was looking around by that time. My daughter was in bed, and it was just me watching the Super Bowl. My wife was reading a book. Not a big sports fan, and I was just enjoying it. And then I was like, "Am I hearing? Did I switch channels?"
It was really suggestive. It was, and then the wife, the way that it was a lot. It was a lot going on. It was a lot. Just go watch. If you didn't see it, people, go watch it because there's a whole lot that you would know exactly what we're talking about. We just can't talk about it because this is a family show.
Thank you. I appreciate that. People watch this throughout the day. Remember Courtside Karen last week with LeBron James? I didn't play her rant. That was in your town, man.
Yes, it was. Courtside Karen. She acted a whole donkey on the court. And you know what's funny about this is that night when that happened, I went back and I watched it, Mark. And then I watched her, because you know when something like that happens and they put her name out there in her Twitter feed and her Instagram, people raked her through the coals. But at the end of the day, I think the last time I checked, she has over 100,000 followers.
Is that what she's at now?
Something like that.
Oh my God,
Mark! She had like 75,000. I'm gonna say she's probably at 100,000.
I wouldn't be surprised. I think when I first heard the story, I checked and it was like 5,000 Instagram followers.
Oh no, she's way beyond.
Yeah, and then like the next morning it was like 20,000. So I wouldn't be shocked even a little bit. Plus she is lovely. She's nice. She's lovely. I think she's a pretty lady.
Do you think she's 25?
Oh no.
You know, it's funny. I have a friend of mine that's a friend of hers.
Oh, okay.
And she said she's 25. And you know what I told her when she said that?
What's
the
that?
devil is a lie. Ain't no way. Hey, she's a hard 25. She's lived a hard life. But they say she's 25.
Oh wow. Well, hey, you know what? She brought it. She brought it at LeBron.
Yeah, she did.
Man, when a lady wants to fight that fight for her man, you just get out the way, man.
But you know what, though? It's kind of embarrassing as a guy.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's like you kind of like it, but you don't like it when you got to get escorted out the building. It's a little uncomfortable, especially when it became something that you didn't want it to become. It became a whole big deal. Mm-hmm. You know, he's a millionaire down here doing well for himself. And you know what's funny? I used to work out at the gym that he works out at. He's a douche.
Oh, is he?
He's a douchey guy.
Oh, then I'm on LeBron's side.
Yeah, he's a douchey guy. He's a little bit of a douche.
This is a big scoop. No one else gave me this scoop, man. This is incredible.
Like, being here in Atlanta, you see the silicone breasts and all the other good stuff, and you see the tight little frames and stuff, and he's a little bit of a douche.
Okay. Copy that.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll write up a story of that for the website. We have the scoop.
Hey, if you notice, since I've learned that we can say douchey, I'm gonna go here and win.
Oh, I can only I can only imagine what we're gonna get into a week from today, my friend. Okay, I want to swing it back to the Eagles to football for just a second. Tom Brady said he wants to play until he's 45 years old. Hugh Douglas, could you imagine playing football at 45 years old?
No, I couldn't. But at the quarterback spot, look how much the game has evolved, Mark.
Yeah.
And how you have, we were talking about this today, receivers and the yards that they accumulate because it's more of a passing game and how long the offensive linemen play. And then the simple fact that it's hard to find good quarterbacks. That's why you have so many older quarterbacks playing into their 40s. I mean, the game is designed for longevity for those positions. As far as defensive linemen and things of that nature, not so much, because if you notice how the game has progressed, you very rarely find guys that are every down players like it used to be back when I played. Even when you talk about the Philadelphia Eagles and Brandon Graham and those guys, they're rotational players. They're playing like probably 30 snaps a game now, as opposed to 60 to 70 snaps when I used to play. So the game has evolved, and the turnover for defensive linemen is a lot higher. But for quarterbacks, the longevity factor is there because they're making more rules to protect them. And the game has become so quick now and so passer friendly that it allows them to play longer.
Yeah, now, it certainly seems like that. And I always blame you for that because it seemed like it was a really rough sport. Then you broke Jim Miller's arm. Next thing you know, they're coddling these quarterbacks.
I mean, but they have to because that's what people come to see.
Yeah, I know. I got you.
Look at Tom Brady and what he's done. I mean, people come to see the quarterback, man.
No, absolutely. I mean, I came to watch the trenches always because I know better because you taught me. But here's one more thing on the Eagles I wanted to ask. Last week you said something to me that's been rattling around in my brain for a while. Mm-hmm. And you said for the entire week. And you said that your old teammate, Deuce Staley, has changed a lot from the player to the coach now. And one of the things that was in the story most recently by Joe Santoliquito in Philly Voice was how they wanted to move on from Deuce Staley because he might have been too overbearing for a guy like Carson Wentz that needed a little bit of that kid glove coddling type of thing. How do you think Deuce would handle a situation with a quarterback or a play? Let's just stick to quarterback. A quarterback that wasn't necessarily being coachable. How do you think your former teammate would handle that nowadays?
You know what? The word that comes to mind immediately is accountability. And in this game, Mark, you need that. You need to be held accountable for some of the things that you do. The one thing that I remember my coach, Tommy Brazier, was we would sit in meetings and, he would cuss me out periodically. But it was more of a teaching. It was a teaching moment. And it was one of those moments where, you have to, like in the game of football, you're as never good as you think you are. And you're always striving to get better. That's why you always hear players say the old cliche, hey, we're one game at a time. And we're always, dude, it sounds like a cliche and I know people get tired of it, but that's the way that we live. Because when you think about it, Mark, you're constantly being critiqued. You're constantly being critiqued and they're constantly trying to replace you. Every year, when you think about it, they're trying to replace you. They're trying to get better. They look at the board and they say, okay, we're trying to get better at this position. We're trying to get better at this position. So you should never feel comfortable, no matter how much money you make or how many Pro Bowls you've been to. You should never get comfortable because there's always somebody coming for your job. And that's what Deuce would have made Carson Wentz realize. And I think that's what he did realize. Because the one thing that has never been discussed that I'm pretty sure that really, really bothers him to this day was that he put Philadelphia in position to go to the Super Bowl. Nick Foles brought it home. And Nick Foles is the one. Even though the city has love for Carson Wentz and what he did, Nick Foles is that guy. Nick Foles is the golden child.
Yeah.
And that's something that when you talk about somebody who it sounds like that is ego-driven as Carson Wentz, that bothers him. It still bothers him. And it's something that if he doesn't put himself in position to actually win one, that's going to bother him his whole career. It's going to bother. You're talking about a guy who in that year was on pace to be the MVP, was on pace probably to be the Super Bowl MVP if he had played, and got hurt. And all of that was taken away from him. So he's been dealing with that. He's been dealing with that since they won the Super Bowl. He didn't have, it's the reality. He's been dealing with that. And then, hey, that's a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah. It's all the more reason to move on. It's all the more reason to separate because Carson Wentz won't have that pressure anywhere else. Only here in Philadelphia.
Not in Philadelphia. No, nowhere but Philadelphia.
Nowhere but Philly.
Nowhere else, and he'll probably strive and he'll probably be happy. But as well as I do, ain't nowhere like playing in Philadelphia. You know how that go.
As we said last week, it ain't for everybody, my man.
It ain't for everybody. It ain't for everybody.
Hugh Douglas III, another fun-filled HUGHSDAY here on the Farzy Show with Hugh Douglas.
All right then, man. Thanks for having me, and can't wait till next HUGHSDAY.
Again, number 53, Hugh Douglas, fifth on the Eagles' all-time sack list, tied with Fletcher Cox right now. No big deal. What's up, Hugh?
What's going on, man? How you doing today?
We like to bask in the drama in Philadelphia. You remember the drama?
You gotta love it. You know what? The thing that I miss about being in Philly, there was always something going on in the off season.
It's so true. It just kind of follows us around no matter what, because we always have our nose in places that it usually shouldn't be, but we make it our business because we're fans. We're media members. We got to know this stuff.
Yes. And it's a passionate place to play. It's a passionate place to be. And they talk football 24/7. No question about it.
Absolutely. And now it's been about, I think by my count alone, this is 4 to 5 stories probably, just about Carson Wentz, the human being in the locker room, not necessarily Carson Wentz, the player. I love talking to that guy. Does a great job breaking it down no matter what. And I said that we were going to be light on language on this show. We will be light on language. That's about as bad as it'll get. At least in my control. I'll do my best, folks. But thanks for Hugh Douglas joining us on the Zados Investments guest line. And I do appreciate the update on Courtside Karen as well. Do want to tell you about our good friends at DraftKings. Make sure you bet with DraftKings. Not quite time for the madness that college basketball usually provides us in March, but that doesn't mean that the fun has to wait. DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook app, is giving all new customers, all new players, the chance at $100. New customers can bet $1 on any team to hit a three-pointer and any basketball game this week in the college rankings. And guess what? You can turn that $1 into $100. That's right. One three-pointer being hit by your chosen team to turn $1 into $100. It's another no-brainer of an offer that you can get from DraftKings Sportsbook. If basketball isn't your thing, DraftKings Sportsbook has daily odds on hockey, soccer, and the NBA, as well so much more. DraftKings has paid out over $7 billion to its customers since 2012. So they know a thing or two about big paydays. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now or use promo code Farzy to get your shot to turn $1 into $100 when you bet on any team to hit a three-pointer in any college basketball game this week. That's promo code Farzy for new customers. Promo code Farzy to get a shot at $100. That's right, 100 to 1 odds on any basketball team to hit a three-pointer. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older. Pennsylvania only. New customers. Restrictions apply. In partnership with Meadows Racetrack and Casino. Winnings paid out over $25 free bets. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. And how about our friends who bring us the morning rush? That is Sky Motor Cars. A big thank you to our friends at Sky Motor Cars. If you know about Sky Motor Cars, you got to check them out. If you haven't checked them out yet, learn all about them. They're doing great things. Sky Motor Cars is the premier luxury dealership in the greater Philadelphia area that promises to provide honest and efficient service, whether you're buying, selling, or trading in your car. But Sky isn't just for luxury vehicles. Sky's inventory has the best offers for you right now on a great budget. If you have a smaller budget than maybe those luxury vehicles, Sky Motor Cars still got you. Stay tuned for a special giveaway later this week, courtesy of our friends at Sky Motor Cars and their partner, that Carson Wentz fella that you hear so much about. Go visit SkyMotorCars.com to learn more. And when you buy or sell your next vehicle with Sky Motor Cars, tell them Marc Farzetta sent you. And finally, the belated birthday boy, our friend Tony Cavada down there at Steak and Main in Northeast Maryland. Whether you dine in a more upscale steakhouse or casual bar and patio, you'll enjoy the highest quality prime meats and fresh seafood, world-class oyster bar, and freshly prepared sushi. And an extensive wine list to boot, including their own family, Cavada Wine Cellars. That's right, Cavada Cellar Wines. They are wonderful, paired great with any meal there. Everyday lunch, dinner, or Sunday brunch as well at Steak and Main in Northeast Maryland, voted #1 place for steaks in America by the Travel Channel and the Cooking Channel. Check it out for yourself at steakandmain.com for more information. Do have a social media check-in. Was going back and forth with some people last night, and we are in the midst of that kind of the Sixers haven't played, so it feels like forever. They're back tonight. So I was kicking it with some people last night, and it just continues to feel more and more like that MVP season for Joel Embiid as the season goes on. Sacramento, 10 o'clock. So they're out there on the West Coast. They're coming off that game, obviously, against the Nets, where it was only James Harden playing. It's going to be hopefully another great game for Joel Embiid, seeing him in the lineup again tonight. Also looking at our morning rush. Been waiting to get to this all morning. I've been teasing it. We told you yesterday about that streaker. We'll get to that here in this segment. But first, I do want to tell you about the Bucks game from last night. Bucks beat the Nuggets 125-112. Trying to follow what's going on in the Eastern Conference. Giannis dropped in 30 points. Joker dropped in 35 for the fine people at home. Now, without further ado, in case you forgot about the streak, and shout out to my buddy Bennett who sent me this story. I didn't see this, and to be honest with you, I don't even know if it's true, but it was in print on the on social media, so that means it's true. And here's in case you missed it, the streaker during the Super Bowl. We played the cut for you yesterday, the radio call, the Westwood One call with who did a phenomenal job in calling this. Kevin Harlan, who called this. Here it is again from yesterday.
Second down, 20, 5:03 to go. Someone has run on the field. Some guy with a bra. And now he's not being chased. He's running down the middle of the 40. Arms in the air in a victory salute. He's pulling down his pants. Put up your pants, my man. Pull up those pants. He's being chased to the 30. He breaks a tackle from a security guard. The 20, down the middle, the 10, the 5. He slides at the 1, and they converge on him at the goal line. Pull up your pants, take off the bra, and be a man.
So that was obviously from the Super Bowl. Well, this story just got better, as a matter of fact. Yuri Andrade, I believe is how you say this gentleman's name, from Boca Raton, Florida, 31 years old. Apparently, this was a big plan. This was all part of a master plan by this man. We think, this drunken idiot jumping on the field, running around. What a moron. And don't get me wrong, he's a moron, especially in today's day and age, COVID and all that. You don't want this guy running around all these players. But apparently, this guy was out and about before the game at a bar. And this story is interesting. And it falls under the line of big if true. Another fan is now coming out with a story about Yuri, all right, the guy that ran on the field. According to the person, he met Yuri at a restaurant prior to the Super Bowl. And Yuri revealed his plan of taking a large wager out on whether or not, the prop bet, whether or not there'd be a streaker during the Super Bowl at plus 750. Yuri took a big bet out. Then he had his brother at the game distract security so he could jump onto the field. And according to the story, Andrade will make over $300,000 on the bet. After he pays his legal fees, we'll see what it comes out to. But apparently he posted bail at like $500. $500 is all it was? I've heard horror stories of people running on the field at Citizens Bank Park and then having like $35,000, a fine of $35,000. This guy got away with like $500 bail, and then whatever the other legal fees might be when he's got to go against, I don't know, the NFL. But still, $300,000 to bet on the streaker. I always thought the best thing, and I know there was a little viral thing over the weekend before the Super Bowl of a guy timing the air check or the mic check, the sound check, of the national anthem because you could bet how long it's going to be. This is probably better than that. I bet there's going to be a streaker, and guess what? By golly, I'm going to be the streaker. Got to give credit where credit's due. He made a big bet on himself. Good for you, Yuri. If you are, in fact, getting $300,000 for that, not too shabby at all. On a more somber note, yesterday, the Temple Owls laid to rest. They paid their respects to the great John Chaney. Multiple people spoke, as you would assume, from Fran Dunphy to Aaron McKee to Mark Jackson, honoring the late, great John Chaney. But one of the best things I saw yesterday was former Temple women's basketball head coach Dawn Staley, who's now coaching the number 1 ranked South Carolina Gamecocks, wore the John Chaney attire while coaching against UConn last night. UConn eventually went on to win in overtime, but Dawn Staley coached last night's game dressed as John Chaney. Dawn Staley was wearing the black sweater, cardigan, button-up cardigan, and the black tie, and she was doing that in honor of John Chaney. I thought that was absolutely fantastic. And then also, and I'm sorry if you know this high school and I'm pronouncing it wrong, Sankofa High School locally, they practiced at 5:30 in the morning yesterday in honor of John Chaney, the time he would hold his practices at Temple University. some great hat tips to a great man continue. So deserving as well. So I just wanted to make sure I acknowledged those remembrances and memorials for John Chaney on today's show. Do want to close with our big bets segment, as we do usually here. Our big bets segment for today, DraftKings. I am ice cold, so I'm a big fat idiot. But whatever you bet, make sure you bet with DraftKings. Bucks, like I said, they beat the Nuggets. That's not my big bet. My big bet right here in my notes. Blazers over the Magic tonight, -4.5. I think the Blazers hosting the Magic take care of business, and they win by at least 5 points against the Magic tonight. So that's the big bet I'm going with at DraftKings Sportsbook. Make sure you download the app. One more story came across throughout the show, so I'm trying to follow this while doing a live show for you today. And I'm getting this courtesy of our good friends at Bleeding Green Nation by way of Eagle Maven. More surrounding Carson Wentz as we wait to see the fate of the Eagles quarterback. But all along, one of the things that got brought up in that meeting between Doug Peterson and Jeffrey Lurie before Jeffrey Lurie decided it was time to end the coaching and franchise relationship there with Doug Peterson and fire him. One of the things that came out was that Doug Peterson said, I want Jalen Hurts to start, not Carson Wentz. Take it or leave it. That's that. Apparently, according to Eagles Maven, SI.com essentially, that was not the case at all. Apparently, Doug Peterson did want Carson Wentz. According to a source in this story, apparently Doug Peterson did not buy into what Jalen Hurts was selling, and Howie Roseman did it all. So did Doug buy into Hurts the same way Howie Roseman did? The source said the two could not come to an agreement on Jalen Hurts' future with the team. And they also couldn't come to agreement, apparently, on Carson Wentz's future with the team. So apparently the original story of Doug Peterson wanting Jalen Hurts to start over Carson Wentz was not true, according to this source. So now we have the ever so famous conflicting reports about who Doug Peterson wanted as the starter. Originally, there was a story that came out from Troy Aikman saying that Doug Peterson wanted to flip it and say, go to Jalen Hurts. Apparently that's not the case. But still, all this is moot as far as I'm concerned. And all that really matters is who the Eagles starting quarterback is going to be next year. And I still believe 99.9% certainty that it is going to be Jalen Hurts. It ain't going to be Carson, because Carson will be dealt in probably at the absolute most the next couple of weeks as Howie Roseman continues to wait to see if that offer goes up from anybody else to take Carson Wentz off their hands. Packed show today. We went a little longer than normal. I appreciate you guys hanging in there. We had some technical difficulties early. We appreciate you hanging in. We appreciate my friend Hugh Douglas joining us on this fine HUGHSDAY. We'll be back with you tomorrow, folks, with a new installment of Farzy in the Field. We'll go out and about in the city, socially distanced, of course, in case you missed the first one. It's on our YouTube channel as well as Twitter as well. So make sure you check those out if you haven't. Be back with you guys tomorrow. Thanks for a fun, action-packed show. Have a great day, everybody.